A Navy SEAL broke protocol to save a hostage, then his canine put everything on the line to save them both. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if you want to support the channel, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. Some men carry war inside them long after the guns fall silent. Marcus Riley was one of those men. At 34 years old, he had survived 12 years as a Navy SEAL, 47 combat missions across 4 deployments, and 1 catastrophic ambush in Kandahar that left him the sole human survivor of his unit. The mountains of Montana seemed like the right place to forget, or at least to try. Coldwater Springs clung to the eastern slope of the Silver Ridge Mountains, like a town that had forgotten it was dying. Population 847, though that number dropped each winter when the young left for cities with futures. 3 blocks of Main Street held family businesses with fading paint and optimism, flanked by abandoned storefronts with soap-streaked windows reflecting nothing but sky. The surrounding wilderness pressed close, dense pine forests climbing toward peaks that scraped 11,000 feet, indifferent and eternal. Late autumn had arrived with the inevitability of a held breath released. The first snow began falling the morning Riley walked into Murphy's Diner, small flakes that dissolved against the ground but promised accumulation. Temperature hovered at 28 degrees. The sky hung low and gray, pregnant with the season's first real storm. Wind moved through the pines with a sound like distant ocean, carrying the smell of wood smoke and coming cold. Riley stood 6'2", 215 pounds of lean muscle and controlled tension. His dark hair was military short, touched with gray at the temples that hadn't been there 2 years ago. He moved with economy of motion, each step deliberate, never wasting energy on unnecessary movement. His eyes were watchful, constantly scanning, categorizing threats and exits with the automated efficiency of someone for whom situational awareness was no longer conscious choice but ingrained reflex. He wore jeans, boots, a flannel shirt under a canvas jacket, and carried himself with the kind of quietness that made people instinctively step aside without knowing why. At his left heel walked Havoc. The German Shepherd weighed 95 pounds of muscle, fur, and absolute loyalty. 6 years old, retired military working dog, explosive detection specialist with a service record that would never be fully declassified. His coat was traditional black and tan, darker than typical, eyes amber and intelligent. He wasn't a pet. He was a partner. A weapon. A brother forged in the kind of fire that burns away everything except what's essential. They had served together through 47 missions, survived the same ambush, carried the same scars. Where Riley went, Havoc followed. Always. Riley had rented the old ranger station, 5 miles outside town, a cabin that hadn't been used for official purposes in a decade. It suited him. Isolated, functional, walls thick enough to muffle nightmares. He had been there 6 weeks, his 3-month terminal leave slowly ticking away while he figured out what happened to warriors when wars ended. The answer remained elusive. He came to town twice a week for supplies, spoke when spoken to, paid cash, left no impression beyond the vague unease men like him always created in civilians, who sensed predators even when the predator meant no harm. This morning followed the pattern. Riley entered Murphy's Diner at 07:30. Havoc at heel. The interior smelled of coffee, bacon grease, and decades of conversation absorbed into wooden booths. A handful of locals occupied their regular positions. Conversations didn't stop when Riley entered, but they dipped, volume lowering by instinctive degrees. He took the corner booth, back to the wall, clear view of entrance and kitchen. Havoc settled at his feet under the table, invisible but present. A waitress approached, young, maybe late 20s. Dark hair pulled back, name tag reading Claire. She had been working there about as long as Riley had been coming. She smiled, professional but genuine. "Morning. The usual? Please, black coffee, egg scrambled, wheat toast. You got it. And for him?" She nodded toward where Havoc lay. "He's good, thank you." She left. Riley watched the room without appearing to watch. Habit. Threat assessment. The old man at the counter was a regular. Farmer, maybe. Weathered hands wrapped around coffee. 2 younger men in work clothes occupied a booth. Construction or logging based on their boots. A woman sat alone near the window, elderly, silver hair in a neat bun, staring at a plate of untouched food with eyes that carried weight beyond years. Havoc shifted under the table. Riley felt it through his boot. The subtle change in the dog's posture. Alert. Not alarmed, but aware. His head had turned toward the woman by the window. Riley looked closer. The woman was small, maybe 5'4", dressed in layers. Airs against the cold. Her hands trembled slightly around her coffee cup. She wore a wedding ring on a chain around her neck, and her jaw was set with the kind of determination people wear when they are barely holding together and refuse to break in public. The diner door opened. 3 men entered, bringing cold air and immediate tension. They were large, deliberate, dressed in dark jackets with Thornhill security embroidered on the breast. The lead man was 6 feet, 220, shaved head, nose broken at least twice. His eyes swept the room with professional assessment before settling on the elderly woman by the window. He walked toward her booth. The other 2 followed, flanking. The diner's ambient sound dropped further. People looked away, suddenly fascinated by their eggs. Mrs. Chen. The lead man's voice carried the artificial courtesy of someone delivering a threat wrapped in manners. Mr. Thornhill asked me to check on you, see if you'd reconsidered his generous offer. The woman, Mrs. Chen, kept her eyes on her plate. I've told Mr. Thornhill my answer. The property isn't for sale. That's unfortunate. The man leaned forward, palms on her table. Especially with your family visiting. Accidents happen in these mountains. Bad weather coming, roads get dangerous, houses catch fire. Would be a shame if something happened while those grandkids were playing. Under the table, Havoc's body went rigid. A low growl, barely audible, vibrated through his chest. Riley's hand dropped, fingers finding the fur at Havoc's neck. A gentle pressure. Not yet. Mrs. Chen's hands shook harder, but she lifted her chin. You tell Preston Thornhill he can go to hell. The security man's smile vanished. You've got until Thanksgiving, old woman. 4 days. Sign the papers, or we stop asking nice. He straightened, turned, and walked out with his companions, letting the door slam. The diner remained silent for a long moment. Then conversations resumed, quieter, everyone pretending they hadn't just witnessed naked intimidation. Mrs. Chen stared at her plate, tears sliding down weathered cheeks, her jaw locked to keep from sobbing. Claire arrived with Riley's order, her own hands unsteady. She glanced toward Mrs. Chen, then at Riley, something unreadable in her expression before she turned away. Riley ate methodically, tasting nothing. His mind cataloged information. Thornhill security, coordinated intimidation, local law enforcement either complicit or absent, elderly woman, vulnerable, being threatened, family in danger. Not his fight, not his town. He was here to decompress, to find peace, to figure out how to be something other than a weapon. He finished eating, left cash on the table with tip, rose to leave. Havoc stood, ready, watching him with amber eyes that saw too much. As they passed Mrs. Chen's booth, the woman looked up. Their eyes met. Hers were green, sharp despite tears, and they held something Riley recognized, because he had seen it in mirrors and in the faces of people, in villages where his team had operated. Desperation. The look of someone who had exhausted options and found herself alone against impossible odds. Not your problem, Riley told himself. He walked out into the cold morning, Havoc at heel, and drove back to the cabin where silence waited. The cabin sat in a clearing, surrounded by lodgepole pine, a structure built for function rather than comfort. Single room with kitchenette, wood stove, narrow bed, and walls bare except for topographic maps Riley had pinned up out of habit. The kind of place that held no memories because nothing had ever happened there worth remembering. He preferred it that way. Riley spent the afternoon splitting firewood. Physical labor that silenced thought. Havoc patrolled the perimeter, ranging out 50 yards before circling back, nose working the wind, alert for threats that never came. By 1600 hours, the snow fell steadier, accumulation beginning, temperature dropping toward 22 degrees. The sky darkened early, winter asserting dominance. Inside, Riley prepared dinner. Chicken breast, rice, steamed vegetables. He ate half, gave Havoc the rest with dry kibble. They had shared meals this way for 6 years, an unspoken division of resources between partners who trusted each other completely. After eating, Riley sat in the single chair by the window, watching snow accumulate. trying not to think about green eyes full of desperation. Not his fight, but the woman's face wouldn't leave. Neither would the image of those three men. Professional intimidators wearing security company patches like legitimacy. The threat against grandchildren delivered with casual cruelty. The diner full of witnesses who looked away because they knew law wouldn't help, and resistance meant becoming the next target. Riley knew that pattern, had seen it in a dozen countries. Warlords, cartels, corrupt officials, all operating the same playbook. Find the vulnerable, isolate them, escalate until resistance broke. It worked because good people convinced themselves intervention wasn't their responsibility. It's not about the fault, it's about working side for something else. That staying silent kept them safe. It never did. Predators always needed more prey. Havoc suddenly lifted his head from where he lay near the wood stove. His ears swiveled forward, body tensing. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Riley killed the interior lights, plunging the cabin into darkness. He moved to the window, staying back from the glass, eyes adjusting. Outside, snow fell through darkness, visibility maybe 30 yards. Nothing moved in the trees, no sound except wind. Then he saw it, a flicker of orange light through the pines, distant, maybe 2 miles toward town. Too large for a campfire, too isolated for a building. Even as he watched, the glow intensified. Fire. Riley grabbed binoculars from his pack, trained them toward the light. The distance and snow made details impossible, but the location matched roughly where properties would be along the access road into town. Large fire, structure fire. Havoc paced the door, agitated, a behavior Riley had learned to trust absolutely. The dog's instincts had saved his life more times than he could count. All right. Riley grabbed his jacket, pulled on boots. We'll check it out, just a look. He loaded a small pack, medical kit, rope, flashlight, knife. Clipped a lead to Haddock's collar, more for appearance than control. They moved out into the snow, Riley locking the cabin behind him through habit more than concern about theft. The hike took 40 minutes, Riley setting a fast pace through terrain that would have been difficult for civilians, but was simply terrain for him. Havoc ranged ahead on the lead's full extension, nose down, tracking something Riley couldn't perceive. The orange glow grew brighter, smoke smell reaching them on the wind. They emerged from the tree line onto a cleared property. A farmhouse stood burning, flames consuming the second floor, smoke pouring black against falling snow. A barn 50 yards away was already collapsed into glowing embers. Livestock fence lay trampled. No vehicles in the driveway, no fire trucks. Though the blaze had been burning long enough that someone should have called it in. Havoc lunged forward, pulling the lead taut, focused on something beyond the burning house. Riley followed the dog's attention and saw it. A smaller structure, maybe a shed or guest house, partially obscured by smoke. No flames, but the door hung open, swinging in wind. Search. Riley released the lead. Havoc shot forward, covering the distance in seconds, disappearing into the smoke. Riley followed, pulling his shirt over mouth and nose against the acrid air. The heat from the main house was intense, even at distance. Snow melting in a wide radius, ground turning to mud. Havoc's bark came from inside the small structure. Not aggressive, alert. Riley reached the doorway, flashlight up. Inside was storage space converted to temporary living area. Cots, children's toys, a small heater. And on the floor, a woman lying motionless, blood pooling beneath her head. Mrs. Chen. Riley dropped beside her, fingers finding her throat. Pulse present, thready but there. Head wound, bleeding heavily from gash above temple. Bruising on her face, defensive wounds on her forearms. Not accident. Assault. Mrs. Chen, can you hear me? Her eyes fluttered, unfocused. The children. Jennifer, they took them. Riley's blood went cold. Who took them? Thornhill's men. They came. Burned everything. Jennifer fought. They hit me. Took them all. Said, sign or never see them again. Her hand clutched his jacket with surprising strength. Please, my daughter, my grandchildren. Emma's 9, Lucas is 6, please. Behind them, part of the main house collapsed with a roar of flame and sparks. Heat intensified. They had minutes before the fire spread or the structure became fully involved. Riley made the decision in the space between heartbeats. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was kidnapping, attempted murder. This was a line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. He lifted Mrs. Chen carefully, checking for spinal injury, finding none obvious. She weighed perhaps 110 pounds, frail in his arms. Havoc led the way back through smoke, and Riley followed, carrying the woman away from the inferno consuming her home. They made it to the tree line as the first siren wailed in the distance, far too late. Riley didn't stop. He couldn't take her to town. Not if local authorities were compromised. His cabin was the only safe location. The return hike took longer, Riley moving carefully with his burden, Havoc ranging ahead and behind, vigilant. Mrs. Chen drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling about her family, about papers she wouldn't sign, about men with dead eyes. At the cabin, Riley laid her on his bed, the only furniture suitable. He broke out his combat lifesaver kit, cleaning and dressing the head wound, checking for concussion signs, saying for shock. She met at a hospital, but hospital meant police, and police meant whoever Thornhill owned. First priority was stabilization. Mrs. Chen's eyes opened fully as Riley finished bandaging. Clarity returned, followed immediately by anguish. My family. Tell me everything. Riley pulled the chair close. Who exactly took them? How many men? What vehicles? Where would they go? She spoke for 10 minutes, words tumbling out between tears. The attack came at dusk. 5 men led by the bald one from the diner, Derek Kane. They torched the barn first, then the house. When Jennifer Chen tried to call police, they smashed her phone. When Mrs. Chen's grandchildren screamed, they grabbed them. Jennifer fought, so they hit her until she stopped. Dragged all 3 to a black SUV, suburban, license plate obscured. Told Mrs. Chen she had until Thanksgiving to sign property over, or family disappeared permanently, into the mountains where no one would ever find them. This property they want. Why? Mineral rights. My father left me the land, copper deposits. Thornhill's company wants them, offered $200,000. I had it appraised. It's worth $12 million. Riley's jaw tightened. $12 million. Enough to justify almost anything to men without conscience. Do you know where Thornhill lives? Big compound. 5 miles west of town. Gated. Security. He calls it the Thornhill Estate. She gripped his hand. I don't even know your name, but you're the only person who's helped. Please, I'll sign anything. Give him everything. Just get my family back. Riley looked at her. This 68-year-old woman, who had lost her husband, was losing her home, and now faced losing everyone she loved because she stood between a rich man and more wealth. Something hard and cold settled in his chest. The part of him that had gone silent 8 months ago, the part he'd come to these mountains to bury, woke up. He had been a weapon for 12 years. Maybe that's all he knew how to be. Mrs. Chen, I need you to understand something. If I do this, it won't be legal. It won't be clean. And I can't guarantee everyone comes home safe. She met his eyes without flinching. Better a chance than none. Riley stood, moved to his pack, pulled out his encrypted satellite phone. He had people he could call, former teammates, contacts in federal agencies, but that took time. Time Jennifer Chen and her children might not have. Havoc sat at his feet, amber eyes watching, waiting for orders that would come. Riley looked at the dog, then at Mrs. Chen, then out the window at snow falling heavier now, covering tracks, hiding movement, creating a world where men could disappear and no one would know until spring-thaw. They picked the wrong person to terrorize. Riley spent 20 minutes preparing while Mrs. Chen rested, her breathing steadier now, though pain creased her features. He moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, selecting equipment with the cold calculation of someone planning an operation rather than a rescue. Sig Sauer P226, already holstered. 2 extra magazines, 17 rounds each. K-bar combat knife, 7-inch blade, strapped to his left leg. Tactical medical kit, compact version. Night vision monocular, civilian grade but functional. 50 feet of paracord. Climbing gloves. His phone, fully charged. He dressed in dark layers, nothing that would restrict movement or make noise. Havoc watched every movement, body language shifting from resting to operational. The dog knew. 6 years of combat had taught him to read Riley's preparations, to understand when they were moving from safety into danger. Mrs. Chen. Riley crouched beside the bed. I need details about the estate. Layout, security, anything you know. She pushed herself up despite his gesture to remain down. I've only seen it from the road. Big house, maybe 8,000 square feet. Stone and timber. High fence around the property, maybe 10 feet, with gate. Security cameras. I've seen guards, usually 2 at the gate. Preston throws parties sometimes. People from Billings, politicians. He likes showing off. How many people live there? Just him, as far as I know. Divorced twice, no children. His security people, I don't know if they live on property or not. Riley processed this. Defendable position. Limited visibility for approach. Unknown number of hostiles. No blueprint, no intelligence, no backup. Every tactical principle he'd learned screamed this was suicide. He was going anyway. I need you to stay here. Door locks from inside. Don't open it for anyone except me. There's food in the kitchen, water. If I'm not back by dawn, use this. He handed her his satellite phone with a number already programmed. That reaches a federal agent. Tell her everything. Her name is Maria Santos. She'll help. You're going alone? Not alone. Riley looked at Havoc. I've got the only backup I trust. He moved to the door, then paused. One more thing. This man Thornhill. Has he done this before? Other people who wouldn't sell? Mrs. Chen's face darkened. 3 families in 5 years. The Kowalskis, the Ramirez family, old Tom Brennan, all had land Thornhill wanted. All refused to sell. The Kowalskis disappeared hiking, never found. Ramirez house burned, family inside, ruled accidental. Tom Brennan drove off a cliff. But Tom hadn't had a drink in 20 years, and they said he was drunk. Riley felt the cold certainty settle deeper. Not just greed. Pattern. Serial predation. Men who did this once would do it forever, unless stalked permanently. Lock the door behind me. Outside, snow fell heavy now, visibility down to maybe 20 yards. Temperature had dropped to 15 degrees, wind picking up, conditions deteriorating toward genuine blizzard. Perfect. Weather like this scattered attention, made guards complacent, reduced camera effectiveness. Riley and Havoc moved into the forest, heading west. The estate was 5 miles cross-country, closer than the road route. Riley set a fast pace, Havoc ranging slightly ahead, both of them ghosts in the white darkness. They covered the distance in 90 minutes, Riley's breath steady, despite the pace and altitude. His body remembered this, the forced marches, the approach to target, the way mind and muscle synchronized when mission became singular focus. For the first time in 8 months, the noise in his head went quiet. This, he understood. This made sense. The forest thinned ahead. Riley went to ground, Havoc dropping beside him on command. Through the snow, lights appeared. The Thornhill estate. Riley pulled out the night vision monocular, scanning the target. The main house sat 200 yards back from a 10-foot fence, just as Mrs. Chen described. Stone facade, timber beams, architecture meant to impress. 3 stories, lights visible in multiple windows. A separate building, maybe garage or security quarters, sat 50 yards from the main house. 2 SUVs parked in a circular drive, both Suburbans, one matching the description from the kidnapping. The fence ran the property perimeter, maybe 4 acres total. Gate at the front drive, closed, with small guard shack beside it. 2 men visible inside through the window, lit by monitor glow. Security cameras mounted on the fence at intervals and on the house itself. Riley studied the layout for 10 minutes, mapping patrol patterns, camera angles, dead zones. The fence's back section, farthest from the guard shack and house, had the longest gap between cameras. Tree line came within 30 yards. Approach from there, scale the fence at the dead zone, move along the fence line to the secondary building first, clear it, determine where hostages were held, adapt from there. Not a good plan, but plans were theoretical. Execution was everything. Havoc with me. They moved through the trees parallel to the fence, circling to the rear approach. The snow helped and hindered, covering sound but leaving tracks. Riley wasn't worried about tracks. Anyone good enough to track in these conditions during a snowstorm would be too good to surprise anyway. At the closest point to the fence, Riley stopped, studied the barrier. Chain link with barbed wire top, industrial grade. Scalable, but not quietly. He pulled out the wire cutters from his kit, began cutting a gap low to the ground. Each snip deliberate and quiet. 5 minutes to create a hole large enough to crawl through. He went first, staying low, then signaled Havoc through. The dog slipped through the gap like smoke. They crossed the open ground to the secondary building, staying below the camera's sightline Riley had mapped, moving during the sweep patterns when lenses pointed away. At the building's wall, Riley paused, listening. Voices inside, muffled. Television, maybe. He moved along the wall to a window, raised slowly to look inside. 3 men in what appeared to be a break room, security uniforms, weapons visible, handguns holstered, 1 rifle leaning against the wall. They sat around a table playing cards, relaxed, confident. No hostages visible in this space. Riley moved to the next window. Barracks-style room. 4 bunks, empty. 3rd window revealed storage. Equipment, monitors showing security camera feeds, communication setup. 1 man sat at the monitors, feet up, attention on his phone rather than screens. 7 hostiles confirmed so far, probably more in the main house. Riley circled to the far side of the building, found what he needed. Electrical junction box, exposed, feeding power to the secondary building. He opened it carefully, located the main breaker, and waited. Timing mattered. Kill power. The security room would notice immediately. Raise alarm. But in the seconds of confusion, in darkness, he'd had advantage. Riley looked at Havoc, spoke the commands in the whisper the dog knew meant combat. When I move, you guard. Anyone comes out that door, you take them down. Understand? Havoc's body tensed, ready. Amber eyes locked on the building's single door. Riley counted down from 3, then through the breaker. The building went dark. Shouts erupted inside. Riley moved to the door, positioned beside. I did, knife in hand. Havoc took position on the opposite side, completely silent. The door burst open. The first man out had his phone up as a flashlight, handgun in the other hand. He never saw Riley, never saw the strike that collapsed him unconscious to the ground. The second man appeared in the doorway, backlit by emergency phone lights from inside. Carson, what? Havoc hit him like a missile, 95 pounds of controlled violence. The man went down screaming as jaws locked on his forearm, gun clattering away. Riley was past them instantly, into the building, moving on muscle memory and training. The card players were standing, confused, reaching for weapons. Riley covered the distance before they could draw, striking with precise brutality. Throat punch to the first, knee to the second solar plexus, elbow strike to the third's temple. All 3 down in 4 seconds. The security room door opened. The monitor guard emerged, weapon drawn. Riley dove, rolled, came up inside the man's guard, trapped the gun hand, twisted, felt bone snap. The guard screamed. Riley struck once more and the man crumpled. Silence except for the one outside still struggling with Havoc and whimpering. Havoc, out. The dog released immediately, returning to Riley's side, muzzle dark with blood that wasn't his. Riley zip-tied the unconscious men with restraints from his kit, gagged them. Dragged them into the barracks room and locked it from outside. The conscious one outside, arm mangled, stared at Riley with shock and terror. Riley crouched beside him. Jennifer Chen, 2 children, Emma and Lucas. Where are they? The man shook his head, trying to crawl backward. Riley's voice never rose above conversational calm. I can let my partner continue his work, or you can answer. Your choice. You have 3 seconds. Main house, basement, locked rooms, please. I need a hospital. You need to reconsider your employment choices. Riley struck the pressure point and the man went limp. He stood, looked at the main house across the snow-covered lawn. Lights still on, no alarm raised yet. They'd have maybe 5 minutes before someone checked on why the security building wasn't responding. Riley reloaded his assessment. Hostages in basement. Unknown number of hostiles in main house. Thornhill himself presumably present. This was the point where protocol said wait for backup, call in support, don't go in alone. Riley had broken protocol before. He looked at Havoc, saw his own determination reflected in amber eyes. Time to end this. They moved toward the main house through falling snow, 2 weapons with singular purpose, and somewhere in that building, a family waited to learn if hope was real or just another way to die slowly. The main house loomed through the snowfall, every window a potential threat, every shadow a possible hostile. Riley circled to the rear, avoiding the obvious entrance, looking for the path of least resistance. Havoc stayed close, reading Riley's body language, moving when he moved, freezing when he froze. A service entrance sat at the back, single door with small window. Riley peered through. Kitchen, empty, lights on. Beyond it, a hallway leading deeper into the house. He tested the door. Locked. but standard residential deadbolt. 30 seconds with his kit and the lock yielded. They entered in silence. The kitchen was oversized, commercial-grade appliances, granite counters, everything expensive and sterile. Riley moved through it toward the hallway, weapon up, every sense alert. The house smelled of leather, wood polish, and the particular emptiness of spaces too large for their inhabitants. Voices carried from somewhere ahead. Male, casual conversation. Television noise underneath. Riley followed the sound to a doorway opening into a massive living room. Two men sat on a leather sectional, watching a basketball game on a screen that dominated the wall. Both wore the same security company uniform, both armed. Riley considered his options. Stealth was already compromised the moment the secondary building went dark. Speed and violence of action were all he had left. He stepped into the doorway. Hands where I can see them. Now. Both men spun, reaching for weapons. Riley fired twice, suppressorless reports deafening in the enclosed space. Both men went down, one screaming, clutching his leg, the other silent and still. So much for quiet. Footsteps thundered from above. Shouts. Riley moved back into the hallway, positioned himself at the base of the stairs leading to the second floor. Havoc took position beside him, body coiled. The first man down the stairs came fast, weapon drawn. No training evident in his panic descent. Riley let him get 3 steps from the bottom, then Havoc launched. The impact sent both tumbling, the guard's gun firing wild into the ceiling before the dog's jaws found his throat. The second man stopped halfway down, firing blindly. Riley returned fire with precision. 2 rounds, center mass. The man collapsed backward, sliding down the stairs. Silence returned except for the wounded. Ed guard in the living room still whimpering, and the television playing to no one. Riley moved past the stairs toward what had to be the basement access. Found it, a heavy door, locked from the outside with a commercial deadbolt. He worked the lock, harder than the kitchen, but manageable. 45 seconds and it clicked open. Stairs descended into darkness. Riley pulled out his flashlight, started down, Havoc ahead of him now, the dog's superior night vision and hearing making him the better point man in confined darkness. The basement was finished, drywall and carpet, but utilitarian. Storage rooms lined one side. Mechanical room hummed with furnace and water heater. At the far end, 3 doors with external locks. Riley moved to the first, threw the bolt, pulled it open. Empty room, just concrete and a drain. The second door, same layout, empty. The third door. Riley opened it and found them. Jennifer Chen sat against the far wall, arms wrapped around 2 children. She was 42. Asian features like her mother, dark hair, matted with dried blood, one eye swollen shut. The girl, Emma, 9 years old, clung to her mother's left side, face buried in her shoulder. The boy, Lucas, 6, stared at Riley with eyes too old for his face. Jennifer's good eye went wide with terror when Riley appeared, then confusion at the sight of Havoc. Don't scream. Riley holstered his weapon, raised empty hands. Your mother sent me, Sarah Chen. I'm here to get you out. Jennifer's breath came in gasps. Is she alive? They said she was dead. They burned everything. She's alive, safe. I need you to move fast. Can you walk? Yes. They didn't hurt the children, just me, when I fought. She stood shakily, pulling the children up with her. Emma looked at Riley, then at Havoc, and something like wonder crossed her terrified face. Is that a police dog? Something like that. Stay close to him. He'll protect you. They moved to the stairs. Riley went first, weapon up, Jennifer and the children behind him, Havoc bringing up the rear. At the top of the basement stairs, Riley paused, listening. Voices from deeper in the house, angry, coordinating. Whoever was left had heard the gunfire and was organizing. We're going out the back, through the kitchen. When I say run, you run, and don't stop until you reach the trees. Understand? Jennifer nodded, gripping her children's hands. Riley led them into the hallway. 20 feet to the kitchen. 15. 10. A figure appeared at the far end of the hall. Derek Kane, the bald enforcer from the diner, weapon rising. Riley fired first. 3 rounds, all center mass. Kane went down hard. Run. They sprinted through the kitchen. Riley covered the rear, walking backward, weapon trained on the doorway. Havoc herded the family forward like sheep, nipping at heels to maintain speed. They burst out the back door into the storm. The snow fell so thick now that visibility was down to 10 yards. Jennifer stumbled. Riley caught her, kept her moving. The children ran with the desperate speed of prey animals, Lucas crying, Emma silent. They reached the tree line. Riley pushed them through the gap in the fence he'd cut earlier, then followed, Havoc last. Behind them, lights blazed throughout the house, shouts carrying through the wind. "Keep moving, follow me." Riley led them into the forest, setting a pace Jennifer could barely maintain, but had to. The children were flagging, exhaustion and terror taking their toll. Lucas fell. Riley scooped him up without breaking stride, carrying the boy on his left arm, weapon in his right hand. They covered half a mile before Jennifer collapsed. Riley stopped, set Lucas down, assessed. She was spent, running on adrenaline that had just run out. "I can't. I'm sorry. Leave us. Save yourself." Riley crouched to her eye level. "Ma'am, I didn't come this far to leave anyone behind. We rest for 2 minutes, then we move. Understood?" Something in his tone, the absolute certainty, cut through her panic. She nodded. Riley pulled out his phone. No signal this deep in the mountains, especially during the storm. He tried the satellite phone. Static, but it connected. "Santos. Maria, it's Riley." A pause. FBI Special Agent Maria Santos had worked with Riley's team on 3 operations overseas. She knew his voice, knew what it meant when he called. "Marcus, I thought you were on leave in Montana. I need federal intervention at these coordinates. Kidnapping, attempted murder, conspiracy, evidence in hand. How fast can you move? In this storm? Minimum 6 hours by ground from Billings. What's happening?" "Preston Thornhill, Thornhill Mining Corporation. He's been running a protection racket, forcing property sales, killing holdouts. I've got 3 hostages he took, and enough probable cause to bury him." "Marcus, tell me you didn't do something stupid." "Define stupid. Did you engage without backup?" Riley looked at Jennifer and her children huddled against a tree, at Havoc standing guard, at the forest dark around them with armed men somewhere behind hunting them. "I engaged when children were in immediate danger. Everything else is paperwork. Can you move or not?" Santos was quiet for 3 seconds. "I've been building a case on Thornhill for 14 months. Racketeering, corruption, suspected homicides. If you've got witnesses and evidence, I can get a federal warrant executed today. But you need to keep them alive until I arrive. Working on it. My cabin, 5 miles east of Coldwater Springs, Old Ranger Station. Coordinates sending now. 6 hours minimum, Marcus. Can you hold?" Riley looked at the darkness, at the storm, at the family depending on him. "I've held worse positions." He disconnected, pocketed the phone. Jennifer was watching him. "Federal agent is coming. We need to get to my cabin and fortify. They'll come after us. Thornhill can't let you testify." "How many men does he have?" "Started with maybe 10. I dropped 7. Probably 3 or 4 left, plus Thornhill himself. But they know this terrain and they'll be motivated." Emma spoke up, voice small but steady. "Will your dog protect us?" Riley looked at Havoc, at amber eyes reflecting what little light penetrated the storm. "With his life. Just like me. Now let's move." They pushed on through the storm, 4 humans and 1 dog against the mountains and the men who owned them, racing toward a cabin that would either be sanctuary or tomb depending on whether Riley could hold the line for 6 more hours against an enemy that wanted them dead and buried where spring thaw would never find them. They reached the cabin 90 minutes later, all of them hypothermic, Lucas barely conscious. Riley kicked the door, called out to Mrs. Chen inside. She opened it, gasped at the sight of her daughter and grandchildren. And the reunion that followed was tears and embracing and words tumbling over each other. Riley gave them 60 seconds. Then his voice cut through. "Everyone inside, now." He secured the door, moved to the windows, assessed their defensive position. The cabin was small, single room, which meant 1 space to defend but limited fallback options. 2 windows facing front, 1 facing each side, 1 rear. The door was solid wood, but wouldn't stop determined assault. Walls were log construction, thick, would provide some cover from small arms fire, but nothing heavy. Not ideal, but it would have to be enough. Riley turned to the family. Mrs. Chen was checking her grandchildren with trembling hands, Jennifer holding both children close, all of them shaking from cold and shock. "Listen carefully. Men are coming. They want you dead because you're witnesses. Federal help is 6 hours out. We need to hold this position until they arrive. I need everyone to understand what that means." Jennifer met his eyes. "It means fighting. It means surviving. I'll do the fighting. You'll stay away from windows, stay low, and do exactly what I say when I say it. Understood? Everyone nodded. Emma raised her hand like she was in school. Can we help? Riley looked at the 9-year-old girl, saw determination cutting through fear. Yes, I need you to be my extra eyes. Watch that back window. If you see anything, any movement, any light, you tell me immediately. Can you do that? Emma nodded, moving to position with the seriousness of someone given sacred duty. Riley spent the next 20 minutes preparing the cabin's defense. He moved furniture to create barriers, positioned supplies within reach, established firing positions at each window. From his pack, he pulled the extra magazines, laid them out for quick access. The medical kit went in the center of the room where he could reach it from any position. Havoc patrolled the perimeter outside, Riley watching through the window as the dog circled, nose working the wind, alert for approach. Jennifer sat with Lucas wrapped in blankets by the wood stove, warming him. Mrs. Chen worked in the kitchen area, despite Riley's suggestion to rest, making hot coffee and soup with whatever supplies she found. Her hands still shook, but her jaw was set. She had her family back and wouldn't lose them again. Riley checked his phone. No signal. The satellite phone showed 1 bar. He tried Santos again. Riley. Update. We're at the cabin. Hostages secure. What's your ETA? 5 hours now. We've got a tactical team mobilizing, but the storm is slowing everything. Local law enforcement? Compromised. Sheriff's on Thornhill's payroll. Figured. Listen, Marcus, if you're about to be engaged, you're authorized to defend those witnesses by any means necessary. Federal protection order is in effect as of now. You understand what I'm saying? Riley understood. She was giving him legal cover for whatever came next. Affirmative. Keep them alive. I'm coming as fast as I can. The line went dead. Riley set the phone down, looked at his small defensive position, at the family huddled inside, at the storm raging outside. 5 hours, 300 minutes. He'd held firebase positions for longer, under worse conditions. But he'd had a team then, support, resources. Now he had Havoc and determination. Determination, Jennifer approached, keeping low. I need to know the truth. What are our chances? Riley didn't insult her with false optimism. Depends how many men come and how motivated they are. Best case, they wait out the storm and we get extraction first. Worst case, they push through and we're in a firefight with children present. And realistic case, no come. Thornhill has too much to lose. But they'll be cold, tired, and I've already killed half their force. They'll be scared. Scared men make mistakes. And you're not scared? Riley looked at her. Ma'am, I've been scared every day for 8 months. This is the first time in all that time I've been sure of what I'm supposed to be doing. Havoc's bark shattered the moment. Sharp, aggressive, from the north side. Riley was at the window instantly, weapon up. Through the snow, he saw them. 4 figures, moving through the trees, spread out in tactical formation, carrying rifles. They stopped at the tree line, maybe 60 yards out, assessing the cabin. Riley recognized the lead figure even at this distance. Tall, authoritative posture, expensive winter gear. Preston Thornhill himself. The man who owned a town had come to personally ensure witnesses disappeared. Riley moved to the door, cracked it, whistled the recall. Havoc sprinted back, snow flying from his paws, and Riley pulled him inside, secured the door. They're here. Everyone down, away from windows. Emma, come here now. The girl obeyed instantly. Riley positioned the family in the corner farthest from windows, behind the furniture barrier he'd built. No matter what you hear, stay down. Do not look. Do not move unless I tell you. Understand? 4 sets of frightened eyes looked back, but everyone nodded. Riley returned to the window, watched the men advancing. They moved carefully, but not expertly, security guards, not soldiers. They reached 30 yards, spread out, taking cover behind trees. Thornhill's voice carried through the storm, amplified by battery-powered megaphone. Marcus Riley, former Navy SEAL. I know who you are now. I know you're in there with my property. Riley said nothing, watching fields of fire, calculating angles. This doesn't have to end badly. Send out Mrs. Chen and her family, and you walk away. You're not from here. This isn't your fight. Take your dog and disappear. I'll even compensate you for your trouble. Riley waited 5 seconds, then opened the window 2 inches. Your property is federal witnesses now. FBI is en route. Your options are surrender or federal charges that include kidnapping and murder. Thornhill laughed, the sound ugly through the megaphone. You think federal help is coming? In this storm? The roads are closed. communication is down. It's just you, a dog, and 4 targets I need silenced. Last chance, Riley. Walk away. Riley's response was closing the window. Thornhill's voice hardened. Then you die with them. The first shots came seconds later, rifle fire punching through the window glass. Riley was already down, glass raining over him. He counted 3 shooters firing, poorly coordinated, wasting ammunition. When the volley stopped, Riley rose to the window, acquired the nearest target, fired twice. The man dropped, screaming. Return fire intensified. Rounds punched through the walls now, sending splinters flying. Behind him, Lucas cried, Jennifer shushing him desperately. Riley moved to the side window, saw movement, fired. Miss. The figure ducked back. This was the problem. 4 attackers with rifles, multiple angles, and Riley couldn't be everywhere. They'd establish crossfire, suppress him at one window while advancing on another. Havoc, guard the back. The dog moved to the rear window, watching, ready. More gunfire, heavier concentration on the front. Riley stayed low, waited for the pause when magazines ran dry. There, he rose, acquired 2 targets visible, fired at both. One dropped, the other scrambled for better cover. That left Thornhill and 1 other, plus the wounded man from Riley's first shot. The shooting stopped. Tactical pause or regrouping. Riley used the break to check his ammunition. 2 magazines, plus chambered round, maybe 35 rounds left. Not ideal for prolonged engagement. Thornhill's voice again. You can't win this, Riley. Even if you kill us all, there's nowhere to run. The town is mine. The sheriff is mine. You'll be hunted until you're dead. Riley checked his watch. 4 hours, 40 minutes until federal arrival. He could hold that long if they didn't change tactics. Then he heard it. Engine noise, vehicle approaching from the access road. Through the front window, headlights appeared through the storm. A truck, 4-wheel drive, pushing through snow. It stopped 30 yards out, and 2 more men emerged carrying rifles. 6 hostiles total now. The odds had just gotten worse. But then the truck doors opened again, and a woman stepped out. Small, dark-haired, wearing a server's uniform under her jacket. Claire, the waitress from the diner. She raised her hands, walking toward Thornhill's. Arnhill's position, shouting something Riley couldn't hear. Thornhill moved to meet her, clearly surprised. They argued, her gesturing frantically, him shaking his head. Then Claire pulled something from her jacket. A phone, held up, showing him something on the screen. Thornhill grabbed it, looked, and even from 60 yards, Riley saw the man's posture change from confident to rigid with fury. Claire's voice carried through the storm. It's already uploaded, Preston. Everything. Your communications, the property seizures, the murders, all of it. 14 months of evidence, and it's already with the FBI. You're done. Thornhill raised his rifle toward her. Riley's shot took him in the shoulder before he could fire, spinning him around. Thornhill dropped the weapon, clutching his arm, screaming. The remaining men panicked. One fired wildly toward the cabin. Another grabbed Thornhill, started dragging him toward the truck. The third provided covering fire, backing toward the vehicle. Claire ran toward the cabin, snow flying, arms pumping. Riley opened the door, provided covering fire over her head. She dove through the doorway, Riley slamming it behind her. Outside, the truck engine roared. Tires spun, then caught. The vehicle reversed, turned, and fled into the storm, leaving one body in the snow and blood trails marking retreat. Silence settled, except for breathing and wind. Riley turned to Claire. You want to explain what just happened? She was gasping, terrified but defiant. I'm a reporter, real one, not just a waitress. I've been undercover investigating Thornhill for over a year. I have everything, recordings, documents, proof. I uploaded it to my editor and the FBI 30 minutes ago when I heard the shooting. Thornhill's empire just collapsed. Riley stared at her, then started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it. This small woman with a phone, destroying what Riley's weapons couldn't. You just saved all our lives. Claire looked at the Chen family, at Mrs. Chen, crying with relief, at Jennifer, holding her children. No, you did that. I just made sure the bastard pays for it. Riley moved back to the window, watching the storm swallow the truck's taillights. Thornhill was wounded, fleeing, his men scattered. But wounded animals were dangerous, and desperate men even more so. 4 hours until extraction. Anything could still happen. The storm began to break 2 hours later, winds subsiding, snow falling lighter. Riley maintained watch at the windows, scanning the tree line for movement that never came. Thornhill and his remaining men had retreated, leaving the cabin in tense silence, broken only by the crackling wood stove and whispered conversations. Claire sat at the small table, her phone connected to Riley's satellite link, coordinating with her editor and the FBI. She had been 29 years old when she started investigating Thornhill Mining Corporation, fresh from a journalism degree and determined to expose corruption. 14 months of waitressing, documenting, recording conversations in the diner, where men thought servers were invisible. She had evidence of bribes to Sheriff Bridges, communications discussing property seizures, and recordings where Thornhill explicitly ordered intimidation tactics. "Santos says they're 90 minutes out now," Claire announced, lowering the phone. "Raids are clearing enough for the convoy to move. They're bringing U.S. Marshals and a full tactical team." Riley nodded, still watching the forest. Something felt wrong. Thornhill had fled wounded, but men like him didn't surrender. They adapted, regrouped, made final desperate moves when cornered. Mrs. Chen approached, carrying coffee. "You should rest. Let me watch for a while." "Ma'am, with respect, you don't know what to look for." "I know what eagle looks like. I've been staring at it for months." She set the coffee down, stood beside him at the window. "That man destroyed everything I built with my husband, threatened my family, motored my neighbors, and he did it because he could, because money gave him permission to treat people like obstacles." Riley heard the steel beneath her exhaustion. This 68-year-old retired teacher had more combat in her spirit than half the men he'd served with. "When this is over, what will you do?" Riley asked. "Rebuild, testify, make sure Preston Thornhill never sees daylight again." She paused. "And thank you properly. You didn't know us. You didn't owe us anything, but you risked everything anyway." "I couldn't do nothing. Most people do exactly that. They see injustice and tell themselves it's not their problem. Not their responsibility. You saw and acted. That's the difference between existing and living with honor." Before Riley could respond, havoc erupted in ferocious barking, focused on the access road. Riley grabbed his weapon, moved to the window. Through the thinning snow, headlights appeared. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. Everyone down, now. The family dropped behind the furniture barricade. Claire joined them, phone clutched tight. Riley took K position at the front window, Havoc beside him, both watching the approaching lights. 3 vehicles, SUVs, black, pushing through snow at speed that suggested urgency or desperation. They stopped 50 yards out, doors opening. Men emerged, but these weren't Thornhill's security force. Body armor, tactical gear, rifles held with professional competence. Federal markings visible on their vests even at this distance. Riley lowered his weapon slightly, watching. If this was Thornhill's final play, it was elaborate. But the lead figure stepping forward matched Santos's description from their overseas operations. Latino woman, 5'6", compact build, moving with command authority. She raised a megaphone. "Marcus Riley, this is Special Agent Maria Santos, FBI. We're federal law enforcement here to secure the witnesses. Stand down and come out with hands visible." Riley cracked the window. "How do I know you're legitimate?" "Because I know you hate being called Mark. You drink your coffee black with 2 sugars you pretend not to add. And you have a scar on your left shoulder from Kandahar that you told everyone was from training. Now stop being paranoid and let us do our job." Riley smiled despite himself. That was Santos. He turned to the room. "We're clear. Federal help is here." The next 30 minutes blurred into organized chaos. Marshals secured the perimeter while Santos entered with 2 agents, immediately moving to the Chen family. Medical personnel arrived, checking everyone for injuries, treating Jennifer's head wound properly, wrapping Lucas in heated blankets for hypothermia exposure. Santos approached Riley, looked him over, shook her head. "You look terrible. You should see the other guys." "I did. 7 hostiles down at the Thornhill estate. All alive but requiring significant medical intervention. You've still got it, even retired." "I'm not retired. I'm on leave." "After this, Marcus, you just prevented 3 murders, exposed a criminal conspiracy spanning 5 years, and handed me enough evidence to bury one of Montana's richest men. You're going to be in depositions for months." Riley grimaced. "I just wanted them safe." Santos's expression softened. "I know. That's why you're one of the good ones." She gestured outside, We've got APB out on Thornhill and his remaining men. Roadblocks on every route out of the county. With his shoulder wound, he'll need medical attention soon. We'll have him by dawn. What about Sheriff Bridges? Already in custody. We hit his office simultaneously with coming here. He's singing like he's auditioning for opera, giving up everyone in Thornhill's pocket. By tomorrow, half the town council will be in federal holding. Claire approached, still carrying her phone like a talisman. Agent Santos? Claire Morrison, investigative journalist. I have additional evidence to provide, including recorded conversations and financial documents showing the full scope of the conspiracy. Santos's eyebrows rose. You're the source who sent the file dump 2 hours ago? Yes, ma'am. That was some of the finest investigative work I've seen. When this is prosecuted, your reporting is going to be Exhibit A. Santos paused. Though going undercover for 14 months without notifying law enforcement was incredibly dangerous and moderately illegal, Claire smiled weakly. I couldn't notify local law enforcement. They were compromised, and federal agencies move slowly. People were dying. Can't argue with results. Santos turned as more vehicles arrived, these bearing news network logos. Looks like your story just went national. The media descended like locusts, cameras and lights and reporters shouting questions. Marshall's established a perimeter, keeping them back, but the circus had arrived. Riley retreated deeper into the cabin, away from cameras, comfortable in combat but allergic to attention. Emma found him in the corner, Havoc lying at his feet. The 9-year-old sat down beside the dog, her hand tentatively reaching out. Havoc's tail thumped once, permission granted. She stroked his fur. Thank you for saving us, Emma said quietly. I was really scared. Riley crouched to her level. Being scared is normal. Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right, even when you are scared. Like you? Like your mom, fighting back. Like your grandmother, refusing to give up. Like you, staying calm and watching that window when I asked. Everyone in your family showed courage tonight. Emma considered this, then looked at Havoc. What's his name? Havoc. That's a scary name. He's a scary dog when he needs to be, but he's also loyal and protective, and he understands that some things are worth fighting for. Emma was quiet for a moment, then hugged the dog. Havoc tolerated it with patient dignity, amber eyes finding Riley's with an expression that might have been amusement. Outside, Santos coordinated the expanding operation. More agents arrived. Crime scene technicians headed toward the Thornhill estate to document everything. Medical helicopters. Helicopters were called for the wounded men in custody. The full weight of federal law enforcement had arrived, and it was thorough and relentless. Jennifer approached Riley, Lucas asleep in her arms. Agent Santos says we'll need to stay in protective custody until the trial. Could be months. They'll keep you safe. Santos is the best. I know this sounds strange, but I'm not afraid anymore. For months I watched my mother being terrorized, watched this town look away. Felt completely powerless. Then you appeared. You didn't know us. You had every reason to stay out of it. But you didn't. Someone had to. That's my point. Someone had to, but most people don't. You did. That matters more than you know. Riley didn't know how to respond to that, so he simply nodded. Santos returned, tablet in hand, expression grim satisfaction. Got him. State police picked up Thornhill 20 minutes ago trying to cross into Wyoming. He was heading for his private airstrip with a go bag full of cash and false documents. Flight plan filed for Mexico. He's in custody, lawyered up, and looking at federal charges that include kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and about 15 other counts. He'll die in prison. Mrs. Chen, overhearing this, closed her eyes. Relief, vindication, and grief for what was lost warred across her features. Claire put an arm around her shoulders. What about the others? Riley asked. The families who died, Kowalski, Ramirez, Brennan. Cold cases being reopened as of now. With Thornhill in custody and his people flipping, we'll build cases. Justice delayed but not denied. Santos looked at Riley. You did good work tonight, Marcus. Messy, completely outside protocol. Probably technically illegal in about 17 ways, but good work. Just doing what needed doing. That's what worries me. Men like you see what needs doing and do it. Consequences be damned. Makes you heroes and nightmares for people like me who have to write reports. She smiled to soften it. But I'm glad you were here. This family wouldn't have survived the night without you. Dawn broke cold and clear, the storm fully passed. The forest sparkled with fresh snow, pristine and beautiful. Last night's violence erased under white blanket. Riley stood outside the cabin, Havoc beside him, watching the organized chaos of federal agents and media and witnesses being loaded into vehicles for transport to safe locations. Emma waved from the SUV window as her family was driven away under marshal protection. Riley waved back. Santos joined him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. She offered one. So what now? Back to leave? Figure out your next chapter? Riley sipped the coffee, watched the mountains. Maybe. Or maybe I figured it out already. And what's that? That running from who I am doesn't work. I'm a protector. That's what I know. That's what I'm built for. Question is finding where that's needed without wearing a uniform. Santos was quiet for a moment. You ever consider private security? Witness protection consultation? There are legitimate channels for men with your skills. Maybe. Right now, I just want to sleep for about 20 hours. Earned it. She finished her coffee. I'll need you for depositions in about a week. Try not to shoot anyone else before then. Riley almost smiled. No promises. 3 days after the confrontation, Coldwater Springs woke to a reality fundamentally altered. Federal agents occupied the sheriff's office, conducting interviews and collecting evidence. News vans lined Main Street, transforming the dying mountain town into a national story about corruption exposed and justice delivered. The morning after the rescue, the town square filled with people Riley had never seen display emotion, holding a vigil for the families Thornhill had destroyed. Riley attended from the back, Havoc at his side, both uncomfortable with the attention but understanding the need. People needed to witness accountability, to see that evil could be defeated. Claire's story broke nationally that same morning. Her 14 months of investigation became a 60-page exposé detailing systematic corruption, land theft, and suspected murders spanning 5 years. Networks picked it up. Her editor called it career-defining journalism. She called it doing what should have been done years ago. Preston Thornhill III faced 63 federal charges. His arraignment was held in Billings under maximum security. Bail denied, assets frozen. His mining corporation collapsed within 48 hours. Stock worthless, executive board resigning en masse. The man who had owned a town now owned nothing except an orange jumpsuit and a cell. Sheriff Wade Bridges turned witness, providing detailed testimony about 8 years of accepting bribes, suppressing complaints, and looking away while Thornhill eliminated opposition. He faced 20 years minimum, his legacy destroyed along with any pretense of serving justice. 4 members of the town council were arrested. 3 local businessmen who served as intermediaries in Thornhill's land and seizures faced charges. The entire corrupt structure collapsed like a house built on sand, and a town that had lived under shadow finally saw sunlight. Riley stayed away from most of it, maintaining distance in his cabin, while federal investigators came and went requesting statements, clarifications, depositions. Agent Santos ran interference when she could, but the machinery of justice required Riley's participation whether he wanted it or not. On the 4th day, Mrs. Chen returned to Coldwater Springs under martial escort to see what remained of her property. Riley met her there, standing in the snow-covered ruins of her farmhouse. The structure had burned to the foundation, only the stone chimney standing like a grave marker. The barn was ash. Her 40 acres of land stretched around them, beautiful and scarred. "I'm so sorry," Riley said quietly. Mrs. Chen walked through the ruins, her boots crunching in frozen debris. She picked up something from the ash, turned it over in her hands. A piece of pottery, miraculously intact. Part of a serving dish she and her husband had received as a wedding gift 46 years ago. "Everything I built with David is gone." Her voice was steady despite tears. "Our home, our memories, the life we made here. I know sorry doesn't fix it." She looked at him, this 68-year-old woman who had lost so much but refused to be broken. "You're right, it doesn't. But you know what does? Knowing he's in prison, knowing my family is alive, knowing other families won't suffer what mine did." She clutched the pottery piece. "Preston Thornhill took my house. He didn't take my spirit. That's still mine." Jennifer and the children arrived, still under protection, but allowed brief return. Emma ran to Riley, hugged him fiercely. Lucas followed more cautiously, then hugged him too. These children who had been traumatized, whose innocence had been stolen, showing resilience that humbled him. "Are you staying?" Emma asked. "In town?" Riley crouched to her level. For a little while, then I have to go back to my real job. Will we see you again? He wanted to say yes, to promise things he wasn't sure he could deliver. Instead he said, I hope so. Jennifer stood with her mother, both of them surveying the destroyed property. Agent Santos said the federal government seized all of Thornhill's assets. They're establishing a victim compensation fund. We'll get fair market value for the mineral rights, plus damages. It won't rebuild what was lost, but it's something. What will you do? Riley asked. Mrs. Chen and Jennifer exchanged looks. Mrs. Chen spoke first. Rebuild. Right here. On this land my father left me, where I built a life with my husband, where my daughter grew up. Preston Thornhill wanted this property so badly he was willing to kill for it. Well, he doesn't get it. We're staying. It'll take time. I have time. And I have family. And now, I have something else. She looked at Riley. I have hope that there are still people who stand up when standing up is hard. You reminded me that courage isn't extinct. The marshal escort signaled time to leave. The Chen family had to return to protective custody until the trial. Emma hugged Riley again. Lucas waved shyly. Jennifer shook his hand with quiet gratitude. Mrs. Chen was last. You gave me my life back, she said simply. All our lives. I don't have words adequate for that debt. You don't owe me anything. You survived. That's enough. No, it's not. When this is over, when we rebuild, you'll always have a place here. A home, if you want it. Family, if you need it. That's a standing offer with no expiration. Riley found his throat tight. Thank you. They left in the convoy of federal vehicles, and Riley stood alone in the ruins with Havoc, watching them disappear down the access road. That evening, Claire found him at Murphy's Diner, one of the few establishments still operating normally. She slid into his booth uninvited, carrying the energy of someone running on purpose rather than sleep. Fa'id wanna know. My story got nominated for a Pulitzer. My editor says I can write my own ticket now, any major paper in the country. Congratulations, you earned it. I'm staying here. She said it simply, like announcing weather. Coldwater Springs needs rebuilding, not just structures, but trust. Someone needs to tell those stories, document the recovery, make sure what happened here isn't forgotten. That's going to be me. Riley studied her. This town nearly got you killed. This town is full of good people who were terrorized into silence. Now they have a chance to be heard. I'm not walking away from that. She paused. What about you? Agent Santos said your leave ends in 6 weeks. Back to the Navy? Don't know. Been thinking about that question for 8 months. Still don't have an answer. Maybe you're asking the wrong question. What's the right one? Not what you'll do, but where you're needed. Men like you, with your skills and your conscience, you're rare. A question is finding where that combination. Ian does the most good. Riley had no response to that, so he drank his coffee and watched snow fall outside the window. The next week blurred into depositions, statements, and federal paperwork. Riley spent hours in conference rooms recounting the events, providing tactical details, explaining decisions made in seconds that prosecutors would analyze for months. Through it all, Agent Santos guided him, translating his military mindset into legal language, protecting him from the full weight of bureaucracy. Preliminary hearing is set for 6 weeks, Santos told him on day 8. Thornhill's lawyers are trying for dismissal. Won't work, but they'll try. With the evidence Claire provided plus your testimony plus the physical evidence at the estate, prosecution has the strongest case I've seen in 15 years. He's going away forever. And the Chen family? Protected until trial. Then they're free to return. We're coordinating with state police to establish permanent presence in Coldwater Springs. Clean house completely. The corruption ends. Riley nodded, satisfied. Justice would be served. The family would survive. The town would recover. His part was done. That night, back at the cabin, Riley sat in the dark with Havoc at his feet and faced the question Claire had posed. Not what he would do, but where he was needed. For 12 years. He had been a weapon pointed at America's enemies, operating in shadows, doing violence so others could live in peace. He had been good at it, the best. But Kandahar had ended that chapter, left him the sole survivor carrying ghosts and wondering if he had anything left to offer. Then Mrs. Chen had looked at him with desperate eyes, and everything had crystallized. He was still a weapon, but weapons could protect as well as destroy. Could defend the helpless rather than hunt the dangerous. Maybe that was the answer. Not retirement, not return to service, but something in between. Finding people like the Chen family, people facing evil they couldn't defeat alone, and standing with them. It wasn't a complete answer, but it was a direction. And after 8 months of aimless drifting, direction felt like salvation. Havoc lifted his head, amber eyes finding Riley's in the darkness. The dog understood before Riley spoke, reading intention in posture and breath. "We're not done yet, are we?" Riley said quietly. "This isn't where it ends." Havoc's tail thumped once against the floor. Agreement, partnership, loyalty that transcended words. Riley pulled out his phone, scrolled to Santos's number, sent a text. "When this wraps, let's talk about contract work. Witness protection, high-risk security, places where someone with my skills can do good legally." A response came within minutes. "Wondered when you'd ask. I have a list. We'll talk." Riley set the phone down, looked at Havoc, felt something settle in his chest that had been restless since Kandahar. Not peace, not yet, but purpose. The understanding that he didn't have to choose between being a warrior and being good. That protecting the innocent was the highest calling a warrior could answer. Outside, snow began falling again, gentle this time, covering the world in quiet white. Inside the cabin, Marcus, Riley, and Havoc sat in comfortable silence, 2 weapons at rest, but ready, waiting for the next call to action. The next person who needed someone to stand, when standing was all that remained, between them and darkness. 3 months later, February brought cold that settled into bones and stayed there. Marcus Riley stood in the briefing room at the FBI's Denver field office, reviewing his first official contract. Witness protection specialist, high-risk security consultation, exactly what Santos had promised. The federal government wanted his expertise protecting people whose testimony threatened powerful organizations, people like the Chen family. The trial had concluded 2 weeks prior. Preston Thornhill III received 4 to 7 years federal prison, no parole possibility. Derek Kane and his security team faced sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years. Sheriff Bridges got 18 years and lost his pension. The corrupt town council members awaited sentencing. Claire Morrison's reporting won the Pulitzer. Then she turned down offers from major newspapers to stay in Coldwater Springs and document the rebuilding. Riley had attended the trial's final day, sitting in the back as the verdict was read. Preston Thornhill, who had owned a town and destroyed families for profit, showed no emotion as his life ended behind the word guilty, repeated 63 times. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, Jennifer beside her, both women crying tears that were more relief than joy. Justice delivered rarely felt triumphant. Mostly it felt like closing wounds that would never fully heal. After the trial, Riley returned to the cabin one last time. His 3-month leave had expired. He had submitted his retirement paperwork from the Navy. 12 years of service concluded with honorable discharge and benefits he'd probably never use. The Navy had been in his life, his identity, his purpose. Now it was his past. The cabin looked exactly as it had when he first arrived, unchanged except for the memories now saturating its walls. This was where he'd tried to hide from himself, where he'd failed, where he'd found something better than hiding, a reason to stop running. Havoc explored the perimeter one final time, marking territory that would no longer be theirs. Riley packed the few possessions that mattered, left the furniture and supplies for whoever came next, and locked the door on that chapter. Before leaving Montana, he made one last stop. A Chen property had transformed. The burned ruins were cleared, foundation poured for a new house, framing already rising. Mrs. Chen had used the compensation fund and her mineral rights settlement to rebuild, not just her home, but her life. She stood amid the construction, directing workers with clipboard in hand, silver hair pulled back. That same determination Riley remembered from their first meeting now channeled into creation rather than survival. She saw Riley's truck approach, waved, walked over as he climbed out. Havoc bounded to greet her, tail wagging, receiving the kind of enthusiastic petting usually reserved for heroes, which the dog absolutely was. "Marcus, I hoped you'd come before leaving." She gestured at the construction. "What do you think?" "Impressive. You work fast." "At 68 years old, I don't have time to waste. The house will be finished by summer. Bigger than the old one, room for Jennifer and the kids when they visit." I'm thinking about turning part of the property into a community center, place for people to gather. This town needs spaces for healing. Riley smiled. That's good, really good. Walk with me. She led him away from the construction noise, toward the tree line where snow still clung to shadows. I got a letter last week from the Ramirez family. The sister, the one who survived the fire that killed her parents and brother 8 years ago. She read Claire's story, reached out. She wants to come back, reclaim their property, build something in their memory. The Kowalski daughter, too. They're coming home. Because of you, Riley said. Because you didn't give up. Because someone stood with me when I had nothing left except stubbornness. She stopped, turned to face him fully. You're leaving Montana. Contract work with the FBI. Protecting witnesses, high-risk security. Turns out my particular skill set has civilian applications. Good. The world needs more men who run toward trouble instead of away from it. She paused. Emma asks about you. She wants to be a police officer when she grows up. Says she wants to protect people like you and Havoc protected her. Riley felt his throat tighten. She's a good kid. She's a kid who learned that heroes are real because she met one. Mrs. Chen reached into her pocket, pulled out an envelope. I wrote you something. Don't open it now, read it later. But I want you to know that whatever roads you walk from here, wherever this new mission takes you, you'll always have family in Montana. You're not alone anymore, Marcus. You never have to be again. Riley took the envelope, didn't trust himself to speak, simply nodded. Mrs. Chen hugged him. This small woman who contained more strength than people twice her size. Then she crouched to Havoc, scratched behind his ears. You take care of him, understand? Make sure he doesn't forget there are people who love him. Havoc's tail wagged agreement. Riley drove away from Coldwater Springs as afternoon sun broke through clouds, painting the mountains gold and white. In his rear-view mirror, the town shrank to insignificance, but its weight remained. He had arrived broken, seeking isolation and silence. He was leaving with purpose, carrying the knowledge that isolation solved nothing and silence only protected evil. That evening, in a Denver hotel room, Riley opened Mrs. Chen's letter. Her handwriting was precise, teacher perfect, each word chosen with care. Marcus, you told me once that you didn't know what warriors did when wars ended. I've thought about that often these past months. Here's what I believe. The war never ends, not really. There will always be people like Preston Thornhill who mistake power for permission to harm others. There will always be vulnerable people who need someone to stand between them and darkness. The war doesn't end, but the battlefield changes. You're not fighting for nations or politics now. You're fighting for individuals, for families, for the belief that good people deserve protection and evil people deserve justice. That's not a lesser mission. That's the highest mission. Thank you for standing when standing mattered. Thank you for reminding me and my family and this whole town that courage still exists. Whatever comes next for you, know that you changed lives here. You saved lives here. That matters more than you'll ever fully understand. With eternal gratitude, Sarah Chen. Riley folded the letter carefully, placed it in his pack next to his service medals. LS and the photograph of his unit from Kandahar, pieces of who he was, who he'd been, who he was becoming. Havoc lay on the hotel bed, amber eyes watching, always watching. Riley sat beside him, hand finding the familiar comfort of the dog's fur. New chapter, partner. You ready? Havoc's response was to rest his head on Riley's leg, weight and warmth and absolute loyalty. Riley's phone buzzed. Santos, forwarding an assignment. Family in Oregon, witness in corporate fraud case. Death threats escalating. Local law enforcement compromised. Standard protection insufficient. Interested? Riley read the details. Single mother, 2 children, facing down a corporation that had stolen her husband's research and orchestrated his accident when he threatened to expose them. Powerful enemies, vulnerable family, local authorities either incompetent or corrupted. He knew this story now, had lived its variations. This was what he was built for. He typed his response. When do I start? Santos replied immediately. Your flight leaves tomorrow at 0800. Details attached. Welcome to the team, Riley. Riley set the phone down, looked at Havoc. Oregon. Corporate bad guys this time. Different coast, same mission. The dog's tail thumped once. That night, Riley slept without nightmares for the first time since Kandahar. Not because the ghosts were gone. They'd never be gone, but because he'd found a way to honor them. His team had died protecting innocent people from violence. He would live doing the same. Their mission continued through him, and that gave their deaths meaning beyond tragedy. Morning came cold and clear. Riley and Havoc drove to the airport in silence that was comfortable rather than heavy. At the terminal, Riley noticed the stares, civilians recognizing a predator in their midst, but not understanding what they saw. A man and dog who moved like they shared one mind, who carried themselves with the quiet certainty of people who had seen hell and walked out unimpressed. On the flight, Riley reviewed the Oregon case file. Michelle Brenner, 36, widow, 2 sons aged 8 and 11. Her husband had been a software engineer who discovered his employer was stealing proprietary research from smaller companies. He'd gathered evidence, prepared to go public, then died in a single-car accident that was ruled accidental despite multiple inconsistencies. Michelle inherited his files, continued his mission, and now faced threats that local police called harassment, but Riley recognized as escalating intimidation, identical to what the Chen family had suffered. Different state, different villain, same pattern. The seatbelt sign turned off. Riley stretched, felt Havoc shift under the seat ahead, where the dog traveled. They'd land in 3 hours, meet Michelle Brenner by evening, assess the threat, establish defense, and do what they did best. Stand between innocent people and the evil that fought power made it untouchable. Riley looked out the window, at clouds stretching to horizon, thought about Mrs. Chen's letter, about Emma wanting to be a police officer, about a town healing because someone chose to act when action was hard. Maybe that was enough. Not saving the world. Not ending evil forever. Just standing firm when one family needed someone to stand. Multiply that by however many families he could help, however many missions Santos sent his way, and maybe the aggregate mattered. Maybe this was what warriors did when wars ended. They found new wars, smaller and personal, fought not for nations but for individuals, protected not borders but homes, served not governments but conscience. The plane descended through clouds toward Oregon, toward Michelle Brenner and her sons, toward another family that didn't know help was coming but desperately needed it. Havoc shifted, ready, always ready. Riley felt that familiar coldness settle in his chest, the part of him that was weapon and protector and absolutely committed to ensuring that people who thought money or power gave them permission to destroy lives learned different. Because somewhere out there, someone was waiting for a hero to appear, and when duty called, when evil thought it would win because good people stood silent, Marcus, Riley, and Havoc would answer. They always would. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that courage and justice still matter, please subscribe to this channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Riley's position? Would you have walked away or stood firm? Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand, one person who sees injustice and refuses to accept it, one person with the courage to risk everything for people they don't even know. That person exists. They walk among us. And when darkness comes, when evil thinks it's won, they step forward and remind us all that good is not extinct. It's just waiting for the right moment to act. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting for a hero. And when duty calls, they'll answer. Every single time.